In this lesson, we will talk about verbs and verb endings. So, number one, verbs. We've already talked about two verbs in Spanish class. The verb está, which means to be, and the verb es, which also means to be. So these are being verbs. Well, today we're going to talk about some other verbs which are mostly action verbs. So you should kind of be familiar with that in English as well. There are being verbs and action verbs. An action verb would be something you are doing, or something you are seeing, hearing, saying, thinking, or feeling. These would be action verbs. So one more time, a verb is a word that conveys action. Doing, seeing, hearing, saying, thinking, feeling, simply being, or becoming are all actions in a sense, and therefore are verbs. Next, we'll talk about the makeup of verbs. In both English and Spanish, verbs are made up of two parts, the stem and the ending. While the stem generally remains constant, the ending may vary depending on the subject. For example, I, you, we, etc., or the tense, whether we're talking about the present or the past tense of the verb. Let me give you an example. The stem. Let's take a word like visit. That's the stem of the word. Well, I could say, I visit. But if I say he, we would have to add an S to it. He visits. Or she visits. You visit. We visit. I visit. He visits. She visits. So see, depending on who the subject is, it might have a different ending. It could also have a different ending if we're talking about the past tense. We would have to put ed on the end. So I visited, she visited, we visited, they visited. It has a different ending depending on the tense. Another ending that we can add in English would be ing. I am visiting. She is visiting. We are visiting. So these are called the stem endings. So to recap, verbs are made up of two parts, the stem and the ending. In your most recent vocabulary lesson, you learned 15 verbs with the common ending AR. For example, presentar, preparar, practicar, completar. Those were your vocabulary words. So in Spanish, verbs ending with ar are called infinitives. We spoke about that in class. In English, the infinitive is the impersonal to form of the verb. And the most common, by far, in Spanish, most common type of infinitives are the AR verbs. So to present would be presentar, to invent, inventar, to visit, visitar. There are, however, Spanish infinitives that have other endings. For example, there are some that have an ER at the end. So to respond in Spanish would be responder. To defend would be defender. To depend would be depender. There are even infinitives that end with IR. To permit would be permitir. To insist would be insistir. And to exist is existir. To illustrate this, let me show you this little chart. And we're going to talk about the verb, the infinitive verb presentar, to present. Okay, I have to, every week I present a lesson to you in Spanish. Sometimes you have to get up and present your report in front of the class. So to present is a verb, it's an action. So to present, and we can have some different attitudes toward performing this action. If we say necesito presentar, we are basically saying I need to present. Okay, I need to present my case in court, in other words, as an example. What if we want to have this attitude towards doing the action of to present? What if we say quiero presentar? We're basically saying I want to present. I want to present you with this gift. That's an example. And the final example here, I could say, puedo presentar. And what I'm basically saying here is I am able. I am able to present. Puedo presentar. Because of the large number of words in English and in Spanish with a common origin, it's often possible to form Spanish infinitive directly from an English infinitive. What this means is, since Spanish and English are so similar, they both come from the Latin. A lot of times if you are in doubt, now not always, notice that I'm saying a lot of times. It is not always 100% true, but a lot of times you can form a Spanish word by thinking of the English word and then adding AR. So, for example, if I want to plant a rose bush out front, okay, to plant, I could say plantar. See, I just simply added the AR. Plantar means to plant. Or if I want to vote, okay, which I do want to vote, hopefully my vote would make a difference. To vote would be votar. If I want to visit, visitar. Good for you if you guessed that before I put it on the screen. How about this one? Prepare, to prepare. How would you say that in Spanish? Well, if you said preparar, you were right. And then finally, I'm going to give you the example of explore. If you've been in this class, you should know how to say to explore. Exactly. Explorar.